Everybody get your roll on. Everybody get your roll on. What? Welcome to Humble Beginnings, the Undrafted podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Hamilton Jr., man, and I am so hyped about that win by the Broncos on Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now. They were the number 2 seed in the AFC coming into that game on Sunday, and man, it looked like, I'll be honest with you, I had that game marked down as an L, so I've been hyped this whole week after that big win on Sunday. Like I said, this is the Undrafted podcast. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I got to go home and spend some time with my family last week. It wasn't long enough, but it was some valuable time. It was great to see my parents, great to see my cousins, my uncles, my aunties, and man, it's always a good time when you can be around family. So I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We got some good stuff coming up for you on the podcast today. Coming up on the podcast, I got my reaction to the Broncos and the Steelers, that big win on Sunday. Gary Kubiak, there was a report that came out last week. There's been quite a bit going on with the Broncos. There was a report by Ian Rappaport of NFL Network that several head coaching candidates are looking at Broncos senior advisor Gary Kubiak to take a position on the sidelines in 2019, and I'll talk about the possible effect that'll have on Denver. We'll talk about the Washington Redskins signing Reuben Foster after his domestic violence allegations, which is yet another black eye for the NFL and that team. This league just can't seem to get out of its own way. Coming up in What's the Wave, I'll talk about adversity and obesity. And one of the things that sports teaches us is how to deal with adversity. And I'll tie all that in, and I'll get a little bit deeper about how this podcast was originally started in that segment. Then coming up in This Is Some Bull Jive, the Bills, man, they trolled Jalen Ramsey on Twitter after the Bills beat the Jaguars 24-21 on Sunday. So they had a little bit of fun with some old tweets that Jalen Ramsey sent out about Bills quarterback Josh Allen. And if you remember that GQ interview that he did earlier in the summer, they had some fun with that. So without further ado, I'll just go ahead and get started with The Low with Bro. The Denver Broncos went head-to-head, toe-to-toe with the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday, and they got what was the biggest W of their season so far when they beat the Steelers 24-17 at home. Now, if you have a bad heart, this was not the game for you, because the Broncos, they got the W by forcing turnovers on the defense and on offense. Philip Lindsay carried the squad on his 5'8", 190-pound shoulders. Philip Lindsay is a bad boy. He finished the game with 110 yards on 14 carries, and Case Keenum. Don't look now, but Case Keenum has now gone 3 games with no picks. Now, first of all, the Broncos were wearing those all-orange color rush uniforms with the throwback D on the helmet. And, man, I got to tell you, man, I love those color rush uniforms of the Denver Broncos. Actually, I love all the color rush uniforms across the league because I love seeing different uniform connotations and kind of break up the monotony that tends to be the NFL uniform. So the Broncos color rush, their version of it, of course, in my opinion, is the best one, man. That all orange, ooh, that all orange is sick. And then you got the throwback D on the helmet. Yeah, man, look, it's no touching it. That all orange everything look is fire. It is straight fire. But, man, going back to the game, this game had everything in it. I mean everything. Ups, downs, highs, lows. It was a roller coaster of a game, and it was a game that could possibly define the Broncos season. Now, these are the kinds of games where you find out the kind of team that you are. These are the kinds of games where you find out if the squad truly wants it bad enough to grind it out and get the W. Now, there were a few things that I was looking for in the Broncos coming into this game. Would Case Keenum continue to improve as he has over the last 4 weeks or so? What would the Broncos' patchwork offensive line look like against Pittsburgh? Would the defense be able to neutralize Big Ben and that prolific Steelers offense? What kind of game would Chris Harris Jr. have against Antonio Brown? What would the Broncos' rush attack look like? Because you got to be able to run the ball to beat a team like the Steelers. Would Denver play a more disciplined type of football and cut out the penalties? That's an aspect of the Broncos game that's proven to be a bugaboo with them this past season. All these things will be keys for Denver leaving this game with a W instead of an L. Now, I mentioned Case Keenum earlier. He had his best game of the season against Houston a few weeks back when he led the Broncos offense into position at the last few seconds of the game to take the lead before they missed the field goal. In that game, he threw for 290 yards and a touchdown. Now, I've been kind of hard on Case Keenum on this podcast. Basically, only because he struggled the first 8 weeks of the season, holding on to the ball too long, taking unnecessary sacks, throwing an interception every game. But it looks like Case Keenum might finally be settling in to the offense. Now, like I said earlier, he hasn't thrown a pick in the last 3 games, and I'm knocking on wood because I'm hoping that he doesn't throw one this coming Sunday. I'm hoping he doesn't break that streak this coming Sunday against the Bengals. Now, it's starting to look like Case Keenum's getting more comfortable with this squad. He's posted a passer rating of 90 or higher in 5 of his last 7 games. He led the Broncos down the field late in the game last week against the Chargers for Denver to get the dub as well. Sunday against the Steelers, he threw for 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. So if number 4 can keep playing like that, Denver has a chance to win a few more games. Now, the thing with Case Keenum is it looks like the coaching staff finally realized that he's not a prototypical passer quarterback, which I don't even understand how they got that thought about Case Keenum, but they're starting to run more play-action plays for him. They're getting him outside the pocket. That's where he's comfortable at. That's where he plays his best football at. That's the kind of quarterback that he has. Like I said, when they signed Case Keenum in the offseason, I had visions of Case Keenum doing like Jake Plummer did in the early 2000s with those naked bootlegs and things like that. Nobody could run the naked bootleg like Jake Plummer back in the day. That was his signature play, man. Jake Plummer used to kill on those bootleg plays and those play-action plays and getting outside the pocket. That's what he did best. And Case Keenum is a similar type of quarterback. And as far as the Broncos' offensive line, they've played really well. To my surprise, they've played really well because they're a patchwork offensive line. They've lost 3 starters to injury since the start of the season, and they went 6 quarters without allowing a sack. That's the longest streak for the Denver Broncos in the last 2 years. They didn't allow a sack against the Chargers at all last week, and Case Keenum wasn't sacked until the 3rd quarter this past Sunday against the Steelers. They did a very good job at protecting Case and setting up the run game Sunday. Now, I'll be honest. I had this game marked as a close L for the Broncos because Pittsburgh, they were on a 5-game winning streak. They were red hot coming into Denver. They have arguably the best wide receiver core in the league in Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Vance McDonald and Jesse James holding it down at the tight end spot. Now, Denver's secondary is not what it used to be. It's just not. And even when Denver had the number 1 secondary in the league back in 2015, the Pittsburgh wide receiver core, they gave them that work, specifically Antonio Brown. So with this game, Denver's secondary is not what it used to be. Bradley Roby was in concussion protocol all last week, so it was kind of unclear whether or not he would even play. So that was another reason why I had it marked down as a close L. Then, like I said, with Antonio Brown, back in 2015, he gave Chris Harris Jr. that work because in that game, he racked up 189 yards on 16 catches and 2 touchdowns. So coming into this one, I was like, man, the Steelers, they're red hot right now. They got one of the best wide receiver cores in the league, if not the best. Denver's struggling in the secondary, so Denver's probably going to drop this game by a touchdown. And I am so glad the Broncos proved me wrong. The keys for the Broncos on Sunday were big defensive plays when it counted the most. They had a blocked field goal, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, 2 interceptions, and 2 sacks. Now, they gave up a truckload of yards to the Steelers. Big Ben, he finished with 462 yards passing, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, and then they added another 100-plus yards on the ground. So the thing with the Broncos is they gave up over 500 yards of offense. It was the turnovers that killed the Steelers on Sunday. So that's still an alarming stat that the Broncos gave up that many yards. When you give up that many yards, you're supposed to lose the game. But that just goes to show you just how important turnovers are in the National Football League. Now, they had the blocked field goal by Justin Simmons early in the first quarter. Justin Simmons, that brother's going to be a top 5 safety in this league. Number 31 for the Broncos. He's going to be a top 5 safety in the next few years. Mark my words. That's Denver's 4th blocked kick this season, which leads the NFL. So Denver special teams, they're a lot better than what they used to be. Thank you, football Jesus. Now, blocking field goals is nothing new for Justin Simmons because he blocked a field goal back in 2016 down in New Orleans. That's the one where Will Parks, he scooped it up, scored. Denver won the game at the last second on that play. And speaking of Will Parks, they had 2 forced fumbles. The first one came when Will Parks popped Xavier Grimble on that 3rd and 1. And on this particular play, Ben Roethlisberger, he connected with Grimble on this big 3rd down play. So I'm looking at the screen while this play is going, and I'm like, doggone it, man. Now they're about to score, and there's another missed opportunity for the defense. And then the next thing I know, Will Parks, he comes across the screen, lays the wood on Grimble just as he gets to the goal line, and then he fumbles inside the end zone, and the Broncos get the touchback. Those are the kind of plays that you have to make early that help turn games in your favor. The second forced fumble came when Bradley Roby hit James Conner on that big 2nd and 16 run at the end of the 3rd quarter, and Darian Stewart recovered it. Now, as far as sacks, the Broncos sacked Ben Roethlisberger twice, with Von Miller and Shaq Barrett both getting 1 sack apiece. Von now has 10.5 sacks on the season already. He had 10 sacks all of 2017. Von Miller now has 101 sacks for his career, and he now leads the NFL in sacks since 2011. Big Ben and the Steelers, they did a really good job of neutralizing Denver's pass rush for the most part, because they had a lot of short passes underneath and in the middle. They were killing Denver in the dink and dunk game. They were, which they were taking what the defense gave them, and they were just kind of riding the wave. Then as the game went on, they started opening it up a little bit. They started getting a little bit more aggressive. Now, the thing I liked about that, as Pittsburgh was starting to get more aggressive on offense, the Broncos started getting more aggressive on offense. So it was kind of going neck and neck. This was a really good game. The biggest punch to Denver's gut came at the beginning of the 3rd quarter. Pittsburgh, they were on their own 3-yard line. Ben Roethlisberger, he takes a snap. He's back inside the end zone, and he just lobs one up before he gets popped by one of the Broncos defensive guys. He hit Juju for that 97-yard touchdown. And, man, let me tell you, when that happened, the air straight up went out of that stadium. The fans and everybody, they got quiet. Because at that point, it was like, Lord Jesus, here we go. This is the same story with the Denver Broncos, just a different year. Now, coming into this game, Chris Harris Jr., he vowed that Antonio Brown would not embarrass him like he did in 2015, and he lived up to it. AB was held to 9 catches for 67 yards. Now, I got to be honest and I got to be objective. The Broncos, they had him double-teamed all game, which opened up things for Juju, because Juju had a great game. But Denver, they did what they set out to do, which is they shut Antonio Brown down, and Chris Harris Jr., he played a big part in that. And going back to the offense, man, Philip Lindsay, I mentioned him earlier. Man, look, I'm telling y'all, man, Philip Lindsay, he picked number 30 in Denver because he's a big he's a big Broncos fan. He's from Colorado, but he specifically loved Terrell Davis and the way he ran. And I'm telling y'all, man, Philip Lindsay is doing the number 30 justice in Denver, because Philip Lindsay is a bad, bad boy. This dude is explosive. He's fast. He's quick. He's got great vision. This dude runs hard. He runs with conviction, and he's small. He ain't nothing but 5'8" and 190 pounds. So defenses, they have a hard time seeing him. And by the time he, gets out of all that traffic by all those big boys at the line, he's already gone. But the thing I like most about Philip Lindsay is he plays with major, major heart. Because you can measure a guy's height. You can measure his weight. You can measure how high he jumps, how fast he runs. You can do all of that. You cannot measure a guy's heart. And Philip Lindsay has major heart. How this dude went undrafted, I will never understand. But I am sincerely glad that the Broncos came to their senses and signed this brother. Now, he had his second game with over 100 yards rushing, and he has 780 yards on the season. He scored the go-ahead touchdown with 9 minutes and some change to go in the fourth. I just honestly wish the Broncos would run the ball more. That is the most frustrating thing with this team, because the Broncos, they could do so much more on offense. They could be more dominant offensively if they ran the ball more. This is a confusing stat to me, and this is astonishing to me. Denver leads the league in yards per rush at 5.2 yards a carry. Yes, you heard right. The Denver Broncos lead the league in yards per rush at 5.2 yards a carry. Not the Cowboys, not the Saints, or these run-heavy squads. It's the Broncos. But when it comes to their run percentage, they're 22nd in the league because they only run it 38.2% of the time. So that's why you're not seeing Denver mentioned when it comes to these heavy rushing attacks. You don't see Denver mentioned, even though they run the ball effectively when they run it. That's been the most frustrating thing, and that's what frustrates me with Bill Musgrave and his play calling, because it's like, dude, come on, man. Run the ball. You have one of the best rushing attacks in the league right there in Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, and you only run it 38% of the time. But this is all the more reason why I'm hype about this win, because the Broncos, they beat the number 2 seed in the AFC with that L that Pittsburgh took on Sunday. That knocked them down to the number 4 spot in the conference. Now, take a step back and look at what Denver has done the last 2 weeks. They've beaten 2 of the best squads in the AFC in the Chargers and the Steelers. They came from behind to beat the Chargers, and they punched the Steelers in the mouth. Now, I've been saying this for weeks on this podcast, and now you're kind of starting to see some of these experts, quote unquote, on NFL Network and some of these other shows. They're starting to say the same thing. But I've been saying this for weeks. The Broncos have talent on their roster. They've got talent to be able to hang in the AFC. It's the coaching staff that can't seem to get out of their own way and put it together consistently to get these W's. Now, these last 2 games, they've got my attention. But in order for Denver to be taken serious, Vance Joseph and the fellas, they still got a lot of work to do, because they have to prove that these last 2 games are more than an anomaly. Now, they've got 5 more games to go in the regular season. Now, this is the thing with these 5 games. 3 of their next 5 games, they're on the road. Denver has struggled big time on the road the last few years. So if they want to be taken seriously and have a serious shot at the playoffs and have the potential to be a dark horse team come playoff time, they have to win these next 5 games. They might be able to skate by and losing 1 and going 9-7, but they would need a lot more help at that point. But they really need to go 10-6 to stay alive. And even at 10-6 with their losses that they've taken earlier in the season, they're still going to have some help with some squads to lose. Now, if Vance Joseph wants to keep his job, he's got to go at least 9-7, because if he goes 8-8 or below, Vance Joseph is gone. So can the Broncos go 9-7, 10-6, and potentially be a dark horse squad? That remains to be seen. But Denver's next 5 games, they're at Cincy on Sunday, at the 49ers the following Sunday on the 9th. They've got the Browns at home on December 15th. That's a Saturday. That game's not a gimme at all, because these ain't your daddy's Cleveland Browns. They're not the pushover squad that they used to be. They've got the Raiders on Christmas Eve. That could possibly be a trap game, even though the Raiders are trash this year. Then they've got the Chargers at home on December 30th. That Chargers game is going to be huge, because the Chargers, at that point, they're still going to be fighting for their playoff lives. They're still going to be fighting. They're still going to have things to fight for come that game. So that's going to be one of the biggest games in recent Broncos history. And don't be surprised if you see that game get flexed to Sunday Night Football, because I got a feeling that's going to be a big decision-making game. So Denver, they have no gimmies these next 5 weeks, and they have to be able to handle business, no question about it. Now, they need help from other squads to take some L's, but if the Broncos want to be taken seriously and have a chance to raise some hell in the AFC playoff race, now is the time for them to do it. Now, I love the potential of this squad, but potential means nothing if you don't put in the work and handle business. Like Brian Dawkins used to say, respect is not given, it is earned, and the only way to earn it is to take it. Denver has a great chance right now to take it. Continuing on with the low with Roe. Now, I'm going to stick with the Broncos, but I'm going to come at it from another angle. This is the time of the year in the football season where we start to hear rumors of coaching changes. Smoke starts coming out from potential fires everywhere. Well, the Broncos just had a potential bomb drop on them after Ian Rappaport of NFL Network reported that Gary Kubiak might return to the sidelines in 2019, but not as a head coach. He broke the news last week that several head coaching candidates are looking at Gary Kubiak as a great possibility as an offensive coordinator, and the Broncos do believe he will at least consider it. Now, the last time Gary Kubiak was an offensive coordinator was back in 2014 with the Ravens, and he had them rolling offensively. That I still remember that season when he was over there, because they went to the playoffs, and they went to Foxborough, and with that offense, they almost pulled off the upset of the Patriots in Foxborough. Gary Kubiak was Denver's offensive coordinator from 1995 to 2005 before he took the head coaching job down in Houston. Now, if this move takes Kube from Denver, I absolutely hate this move. But if he comes back and he's Denver's offensive coordinator in 2019, I love this move. But if Gary Kubiak was to leave Denver right now, this would be devastating to the Denver Broncos. They simply cannot afford to lose Gary Kubiak at this point in time because this is a critical time for Denver. Denver is one of the youngest teams in the league. The Broncos just had the best draft class in 2018, and that's not Rochelle, the Broncos fan, talking. This is actual facts. This was their draft class of 2018 is reminiscent of the Saints class in 2017, where they found several rookies who could come in and contribute in a big way immediately. Case in point, Courtland Sutton. He's the main reason why the Broncos felt comfortable trading Demaryius Thomas to the Texans. Courtland Sutton's going to grow to be a really good receiver in the National Football League. Phillip Lindsay, talked about him earlier. He's having a great year. If he's not in the running, he should be in the running for Rookie Offensive Player of the Year. Then we have Royce Freeman, Isaac Yiadom. I could go down the list of rookies that came out of 2018 for the Broncos and contributed in a big way, but honestly, we ain't got time for that. This is the best draft class that Denver has had in a long time, and Gary Kubiak, he had a big say-so in finding these guys because Kub is the senior advisor for the Broncos, and he had a big hand in the scouting department. But the thing with Gary Kubiak is, while all that is fine, Gary Kubiak likes to work. He likes to watch film. He likes to break down the game. He enjoys the challenge of trying to get wins. An offensive coordinator gives him the perfect opportunity to do that without the stress of being a head coach. Now, he had the health issues in Houston and in Denver from being so stressed out in the head coaching position, so that position is out of the question. The thing with Gary Kubiak is in his offense, man, that one-cut zone blocking scheme that he and Mike Shanahan made so famous back in the 90s and the 2000s, it's still used by several teams today, either as a base formation or some kind of variation of it. That is still a very popular offense that's going around. The system that they had in Denver at that time, they were consistently turning out 1,000-yard running backs. You know, that system also got Denver their first 2 Super Bowls. And by the way, Gary Kubiak has been involved in all 3 of Denver's championships, as offensive coordinator in 97 and 98 and as head coach in 2015. Now, when he left for Houston in 2006, Denver's offense took a major step backwards and didn't fully recover until they had Jeremy Bates in 2008, and that offense was really good with Jay Cutler and Tony Scheffler and Brandon Marshall. And I believe Eddie Royal was even on that team. That offense was rolling back then, but the thing with that offense was, while the offense was really good, the defense was really trash because Denver had a historically bad defense in 2008, which is the season which the defense was so bad that year, they ended up going 8-8 despite that prolific offense. They went 8-8 that year. That's the year that Mike Shanahan got the axe from Denver. And then after that, the Broncos went into mediocrity for like the last 3-4 years and didn't really return to anything until Peyton Manning came in 2012. Now, going back to Gary Kubiak, the thing with Gary Kubiak and the Broncos is he's John Elway's best friend. And he can reach John Elway in ways that most people can't because he can stand up to John Elway, he can say no to him, and John Elway will listen. He'll listen to Gary Kubiak. And when it comes to Elway and the draft, John Elway has struggled in the draft consistently, especially on offense. Now, he can scout defense like nobody's business. John Elway is a big reason why the Broncos defense has been as decent as it is over the last, for the better part of the last 7 years since he's been in Denver. He's a big reason why the defenses have been as good as they have been. But when it comes to offense, I mean, as great as a player as John Elway was, when it comes to scouting offensive guys, he needs help. I mean, seriously, he needs help. Now, the thing about that is, and I'm not surprised that he struggles looking for offensive guys, even though he played as a quarterback, because most of the time when a guy like that, they study defensive guys, so they know what they're looking for. They know what keeps them up at night. So I'm not surprised he's good at scouting defense. I'm not surprised he's bad at scouting offense, because if you look at John Lynch over in San Francisco, the 49ers GM, John Lynch, he played safety in his career, and John Lynch was a Hall of Fame caliber safety, and he's openly admitted that he cannot scout safety. So I'm not surprised that John Elway can't scout quarterbacks or much offensive talent, honestly. And that's not a knock on Elway. Everybody has a weakness, and it just seems that drafting offensive talent is his. And if you don't believe me, look at the quarterbacks that John Elway has drafted since he's been in Denver. Brock Osweiler. Seriously? Paxton Lynch. Paxton Lynch is so bad, he's not even in the league right now. And he was a first-round pick just back in 2016. I could go down the list, but you get the picture. This past draft was the best offensive draft Denver's had since 2011 when John Elway came back to the team. Gary Kubiak had a big say-so in that. He shored up that weak spot in Elway's scouting game. This is the biggest reason why Denver can't afford to lose Gary Kubiak. Now, if he truly wants an offensive coordinator job, Denver needs to let Bill Musgrave go. Push Bill Musgrave out. I'm over Bill Musgrave. He can go. If Gary Kubiak really wants an offensive coordinator job, Denver needs to let Bill Musgrave go and put Koob in that spot. And honestly, part of me thinks that's what's going to happen. Because when you look at Case Keenum, he's the quarterback for the Broncos. He's a Koob guy. Gary Kubiak is a big reason why Case Keenum is in Denver. He was one of Kubiak's quarterbacks in Houston back in the day. They've got this dynamic running game with Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman. Gary Kubiak loves a dynamic running game like they have. Denver has a decent offensive line. Gary Kubiak would work wonders with this offensive group that Denver has. With Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, Denver has the kind of talent where if they were utilized right, they could do some creative stuff with different variations and formations and all kinds of craziness, all kinds of gadget plays and everything, kind of like they do down there in New Orleans with Sean Payton and Drew Brees and Taysom Hill, Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara with all those cats. Man, Denver could have that same kind of offensive philosophy. And if they put Gary Kubiak in the offensive coordinator spot, and haven't seen the kind of offenses that Gary Kubiak ran back in the day in Denver, that's exactly what would happen. So I say all that to say this. Denver has got to find a way to keep Gary Kubiak in Denver because right now they cannot afford to lose Gary Kubiak. Now, there's a bright future with the Broncos, and Gary Kubiak is a big reason why. Make it happen, Denver. And I've just kind of renamed one of the segments on this next one. What's the Wave? What's the Wave with Chef Rodaddy? Now, one of the greatest things about sports is it teaches you about dealing with adversity. Sports teaches you how to handle adversity. It teaches you how to bounce back from a tough loss and keep fighting for the ultimate goal, which is the win. Sports also teaches you how to take care of your body, what to eat, different exercises to do, etc. And that's what fighting the battle of the bulge is all about. Now, I've talked about my battle with this bull-jive bulge on this podcast before, but I started thinking, you know what, Ro? You really haven't went deep enough into this subject. And the funny thing about that is, this very subject is part of the main reason why I created this podcast, to utilize my love of sports and to have a positive impact on society. And to be honest with you, I haven't done as good of a job on that as I need to. And one of the ways that I can do that, now there are multiple ways I can do it, but one of the ways that I can do that is to tell you a little bit about my own weight struggles. Now, my weight struggles did not come about from health issues or anything like that. Nah, my weight stacked up because I started eating bad years ago and stopped working out after I stopped playing sports my last year in high school. So when you get lazy, you start eating bad, you pack on the pounds. And over time, the weight just kept coming. Now, I'm not going to tell y'all my biggest weight just yet. I'll do that eventually one day, but I ain't going to do that today. Anyway, obesity and being overweight is a major health issue in the United States, and it's getting worse every year. Now, I'm not going to get into the risk factors and all that when it comes to our health and obesity and all that, but I will say this. Check this out. According to the Centers for Disease Control, an estimated 160 million Americans are either obese or overweight. The U.S. population is just over 327 million. That's almost half the country. Now, I used to be in that obese category. I'll be completely honest with you. Nearly 75% of American men and more than 60% of American women are obese or overweight. Now, that's it as far as boring you with all these stats and everything. I'm going to leave it at that. But the thing with this obesity and overweight epidemic is we can beat this, y'all. We can turn this thing around. It's all about changing our lifestyles. We got to change the way we eat. We got to get more active, being more mindful about the things that we're putting in our bodies, being more mindful about the things that are going on with our bodies. Because here's the thing with the human body. The human body talks to us. It tells us when something ain't right. It's a matter of, are we listening to what our bodies is saying? That's all it is. Take it from me. Now, I've dropped a lot of pounds and a whole lot of inches from my highest weight. And let me tell you, it ain't easy, but it is worth it. Now, that much I will say, it's worth it. Now, I'm not at my goal just yet, but I'm well on my way. And let me tell you, you feel better. You look better. You actually, my memory has improved. Like, it is crazy some of the things that has improved since I switched up some stuff. Now, this is where knowing how to deal with adversity kicks in, because it takes patience, it takes drive, determination, persistence, consistency. It takes all of that to pull this off. It takes pushing through when you don't feel like working out. It takes steadily going on even when the scale says nothing is happening. And by the way, while I'm on the topic of a scale, the scale only tells half the story. So if you're getting on the scale and you don't see a whole lot, don't get discouraged, because with scales, they only tell you about how much you weigh. They don't tell you how much of that is body fat percentage. They don't tell you how much of that is muscle mass. And that's really what counts. It's the body fat percentage that counts more than anything. That's what you really want to reduce. That's what you really want to get down, because body fat is what carries the disease and everything else. But I'll get more into detail into that in some future episodes. We ain't got enough time to get into all that today. But like I said, don't get too caught up on what the scale says. It takes driving past the Whataburgers. Lord, even though that's sweet and spicy is what that is. It takes driving past the Domino's, the Sloskis. And Sloskis, boy, that Albuquerque turkey, man. Look here. Ooh, that's cracking the bag. Anyway, it takes driving past all of that. It takes a great amount of all of that to get to your goal. It literally takes a new you to get rid of this stronghold. And trust me, I can tell you firsthand, I know the strongholds of feeling like you got to have this junk food. And I know the strongholds of not feeling like you can work out and this and that and the other. I get all that. And trust me, this time of year, this is the worst time of year if you're trying to lose weight or trying to maintain a healthy lifestyle, because it's the holiday season. So you're probably sitting there saying like, Ro, like, listen, do you know what time of the year it is? Do you realize how all these sweets and all these treats is getting tossed around right now? And trust me, I do. I completely understand. And if you want a cookie, eat one. And by one, I mean one. Not two, just one. Because here's the thing. Start practicing discipline right now. There's no better time than the present. None of us know when our dying day is. We all gonna die. None of us know when our dying day is. So why not start right now? Don't wait until New Year's to join a gym or start walking, this and that and the other. That's a whole nother month away. Don't wait to do something. Start doing something right now. Start small and then build from there. You can start walking for 30 minutes and then add a 5-minute jog in once you got that down. Or start walking for 15 minutes and add a 5-minute jog in there. Or just walk for a week and then the next week add a 5-minute jog in addition to your walk. It doesn't matter what you do, just start somewhere. Now, it won't be easy. It will not be easy. And yes, you will hit some adversity, because anytime you're doing something that's worth it, you always do. But you got to make up in your mind, how bad do I want this? Am I tired of feeling like this? Am I tired of looking like this? Am I tired of buying the big clothes? Am I tired of having to go to the doctor? What do I want out of this life? What do I want out of my body? That's the thing you got to figure out. And let me tell you, don't do it for anybody else but you. Don't do it for your parents. Don't do it for your spouse. Don't do it for your kids. Now, this is the thing. Now, I'm not going to say don't do it for them, but don't let them be your main source. Don't let an outside person be your main source for why you want to improve your health and your body. You do it for you. Now, if you want them to be additional sources of motivation, go for it. But you got to do this for you. And you got to look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and say, look, do I want to keep feeling like this? What do I want out of this life when it comes to my weight, when it comes to my health? What do I want? I got to do this for me. So, yeah, it won't be easy, but you can do it. You can do it, and I'm not going to let you say you can't. You can do it. It's just, do you want to do it? But just like the Broncos did this past Sunday to the Steelers, you just have to push through, and you have to find a way to win. We going to beat this thing, y'all. I'm telling y'all. We going to beat this thing, because we are already victorious. The victory is already ours. We just got to go get it. And the only way to beat it is to take it. Take your life back. Start right now and take your life back. All right, it's time for I'm in and I'm out. The Washington Redskins claimed the rights to linebacker Reuben Foster just 2 days after the San Francisco 49ers released him from their roster over domestic violence allegations made by his girlfriend last weekend. Foster's girlfriend told police that following a verbal altercation, he slapped her phone out of her hand, pushed her in the chest, and then slapped her on the left side of her face. Redskins head coach Jay Gruden, he went on the offensive saying there's basically no guarantee that Foster ever plays for the Redskins. I'm 100% out on this signing. Now, I just don't understand how a league who claims to be unified in the fight against domestic violence and all these other cliches and sound bites that sound really good can let a signing like this ride. And before I go any further, I know there was the instance with Kareem Hunt earlier this week, and, the Chiefs released him. And there was a lot of people who they were giving, they were patting the Chiefs on the back and, giving the Chiefs high five and this and that and the other. And I don't commend the Kansas City Chiefs for what they did. And here's why, because you can't tell me that the Kansas City Chiefs nor the NFL didn't have access to this tape. And I know there was a little statement by some anonymous sources, quote unquote, who said that the NFL tried to get access to the tape, but they couldn't. Bull jive, because the NFL, they spend millions of dollars annually with these hotels across the country, flying guys across the country for road trips, with all these owner meetings and this and that and the other. Now, with all the money that the NFL spends with these various hotels across the country, you mean to tell me that they couldn't get access to this tape, but somebody with TMZ could? These security teams for these NFL teams, these security personnel for these NFL teams, they have FBI level access to information on these players. And you mean to tell me the Kansas City Chiefs couldn't get access to that tape? Bull jive. But I get it. They're trying to save face. But anyway, I'm not going to go into detail about that because there's a lot more that has to come out about that situation. But back to this subject of Reuben Foster. This is not the first time that this kind of thing has happened with Reuben Foster. He's had multiple run-ins with the law over the past year. There was a previous incident with him and what is believed to be the same young lady earlier this year. Now, they've been on and off repeatedly for the last 3 years, but it was said that she later recanted her testimony, so the case was dismissed. Now, for his part, I don't understand how you keep putting yourself in the same situation with the same woman, under the same toxic circumstances as he says that this whole situation is. Because here's the thing, as men, we have to be smarter than that. And as a man, if I'm in a situation with a woman and she's toxic, then I need to remove myself. And I don't care how fine the woman is. I don't care how good the sex is. I don't care about any of that. If a woman or the situation with this woman is toxic, you need to remove yourself, because at the end of the day, no man should be putting his hands on a woman. Let's just put that out there right now. You shouldn't be putting your hands on a woman, because at that point, the minute you start putting your hands on each other, whether it's the man putting his hands on a woman, woman putting her hands on a man, the minute you start putting your hands on each other, that relationship is over and it's time to go. And for me personally, it's time for me to go, so I don't do something that I end up regretting, because we were raised not to hit women. We were raised to treat women with respect. Me, my cousins, the men in our family, we watched our dads and our uncles, treat their wives and our aunts. I watched my dad treat my mom like a queen. I watched my uncles treat their wives really good. Not once did me and my cousins ever have to deal with anything like that. We have been blessed as a family in that aspect. So if it's a situation where she's doing something, or I'm just getting so upset with this woman that I think I'm going to do something to her or get physical with her, at that point, it's time for us to go. And as a man, Reuben Foster has got to be smarter than that. You don't keep going back to a toxic situation, because this is something that could damage your career and potentially get you kicked out of the league. Now, for the NFL and the Redskins, though, this is a terrible, terrible look. Because to me, this is a message that the Redskins either don't take these allegations seriously or they just didn't do their homework. Now, he was signed just over 48 hours after the 49ers released him, so they clearly didn't have enough time to dig deep into everything that was going on with this situation. And to make matters even worse, Doug Williams, who's the president of player personnel, said that they spoke with some of his ex-teammates from Alabama who were overwhelmingly supportive of them taking this chance. Now, here's the kicker with this. The Redskins, they have 5 former Alabama players on their active roster. Jonathan Allen, Ryan Anderson, HaHa Clinton-Dix, who they got in a trade from the Packers earlier this year, Shandion Hamilton, and Daron Payne. The only problem here is there's 2 players on the team who said the team never talked to him about bringing Foster in. HaHa Clinton-Dix and Jonathan Allen said the team never talked to them prior to signing Foster. So not only has the team taken the hypocritical stance of signing Foster with these allegations hanging over him, they're also lying about it. Bruh, don't insult people's intelligence. Now, my mama always says, what's done in the dark will come to the light. Now, the Redskins, they tried to sweep that particular part under the rug like somebody out there wouldn't look up Alabama players on the Redskins roster and then ask them. Come on, man. At that point, it's better for the team to just say nothing. You know, there's a saying out there that it's better to say nothing and have people thinking you're a fool than to say something and actually confirm it. Now, you already know this is a sensitive issue. Domestic violence is taken way more serious as a society than it was 10 or 20 years ago. There's more awareness about it. There's more resources for domestic violence victims to turn to, and the NFL, to a small degree, a very small degree, is taking it more serious. Now, I say the NFL is taking it more serious to a degree, but at the end of the day, are they really? Because they refused to sign Colin Kaepernick for taking a knee and protesting social injustice, but yet and still they let a signing like this ride. And the sad thing about it, there is actually fans out there who are okay with this. Now, what does that say for the NFL? And on a bigger scale, what does that say for us as a society where we make less noise about a guy who puts his hands on his girlfriend, a woman somebody who's, he supposedly cares about? People are okay with this signing, but you're mad about a guy taking a knee during the anthem for something that is supposed to help all society. I don't get that. I really don't get that. Now, I'm a man, and as a man, this is upsetting for me. Situations with domestic violence and men putting their hands on women, this is upsetting to me. But if I were a woman, I would be livid, because with signings like this, you're basically telling your female fan base that we don't take the issues you face seriously. We don't take your voice seriously. We don't take the situations that some women out there are dealing with on a daily basis. We don't take that serious. And the thing about it is, when it comes to domestic violence, when it comes to, issues of personal safety, men and women both, you got to separate yourself from that situation. Like I said earlier, you got to leave. When it starts getting physical, it's time to go, because at that point, the relationship is over. And, we've seen instances of men, hitting women, and at first it doesn't seem like it's going to turn, bad, but then, that's situations, and we've seen it all too many times as a society, where these situations tend to turn fatal. And at that point, when it comes to your personal well-being, when it comes to your personal safety, when it comes to your peace of mind, it's time to go. And when it gets to that point, you need to leave. And if leaving is not enough, you need to block them on social media. If you have to change your phone number, change your phone number. In extreme cases, if you have to move. And yeah, I understand you can get a restraining order and all that good stuff, but a restraining order at the end of the day is nothing but a piece of paper. We've seen that time and time again, where somebody gets a restraining order in the court system. They say, oh, well, all these steps have to be taken. And then really, do you really want to leave your personal safety and well-being in the hands of the U.S. justice system? Because there has been plenty of times where the justice system hasn't come through for an individual. So at that point, take it into your own hands. Leave. Change your phone number, block them on social media, all forms of social media. And if you have to move to a different city, move. If you have to move to a different state, move. If you have to get a gun for your personal safety, then get a gun, get your training, and get your license. Do whatever you got to do. When it comes to your personal safety, when it comes to your well-being, when it comes to your peace of mind, you have to do what you have to do to protect yourself. I don't want to go off on a tangent here. But as women, on the financial aspect and the financial consequences for the NFL, women have the power to really hurt the NFL with situations like these. because women compose about 48% of the National Football League fan base. I didn't realize that. I knew women composed a big part of the fan base, but I didn't realize it was that much. That's almost half of the fan base that are women. And if the NFL isn't careful, they might just turn away a huge part of that demographic. And we all know when it comes to the dollar bill, the NFL, they're all ears. Now it's time for this week's edition of This Is Some Bull Jive. The Buffalo Bills trolled Jalen Ramsey on Twitter Sunday after the Bills beat the free-falling Jaguars 24-21. Now, if you remember, Jalen Ramsey talked a bunch of noise on Bills rookie quarterback Josh Allen and a bunch of other NFL quarterbacks in an interview with GQ this past summer. Now, in this interview, Ramsey called Josh Allen trash and said he couldn't wait to play him. A few months before that, he trolled Allen on Twitter when the Bills put a picture up of him completing his first pass in minicamp and retweeted it with the quote, "That's a pick waiting to happen." Ramsey deleted the tweet quickly after that, but not before the Bills could screenshot it. And then this past Sunday, they retweeted that same picture with the quote, "This tweet didn't age well." Listen, I love that the Buffalo Bills did this because it's so much fun when you can shut up a loudmouth with a big old piece of humble pie. Now, when Jalen Ramsey first talked all that noise, I had no issue with it because individually, Jalen Ramsey can back it up. So if you can back it up, I have no issue with you talking trash. Now, winning breeds tolerance. So when he was bumping his gums and everything else last year, it wasn't a big deal because the Jaguars, they were winning. They had the top-notch defense. Offense was playing pretty steadily. They were basically within, a snap or two of the Super Bowl. So when you're winning, winning breeds tolerance. But now that the Jags are doing a little more talking than winning, that whole spiel is getting kind of annoying. Now, if you or your team is balling out, talk that talk because you're walking that walk. But now that it's more talking than walking, there needs to be more silence. The Jaguars have been one of the biggest disappointments in the league this year. They've lost 7 straight games, they're 3-8, and their season has just spiraled out of control. Jalen Ramsey talked all that trash about the rest of the NFL quarterbacks, but apparently he forgot to include his own quarterback in that bull jive he was talking. Blake Bortles has been bad this year. There's just no other way to put it. Now, I'm not going to beat a dead horse because he's been crucified in the national media, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but he's been bad. This is exactly why I said a few weeks back, Jalen Ramsey needs to chill on all the trash talk because he wrote checks that his quarterback was going to have to cash, and now his quarterback ain't got no money in the bank. And I know that's bad English, but he just ain't got it. When the Buffalo Bills are trolling you, it's a problem. This is a classic case of why it's so important to not talk so much. Now, Jalen Ramsey told the world he couldn't wait to play against Josh Allen, said he was excited as hell, called Josh Allen a turnover machine. Josh Allen's numbers, well, they weren't world beaters, but they were good enough to get the dub. Josh Allen was 8 of 19 passing, 160 yards, and a touchdown. No turnovers. And he rushed for 99 yards. Like I said, didn't set the world on fire, but he got the W. Now, this trash QB was just good enough Sunday to beat the Jags, and Buffalo is on a 2-game winning streak. Like my parents always say, be careful what you wish for because you might just get it. Jalen Ramsey, that trash you were talking, that's some bull jive. Well, that's my time for episode 32 of the Undrafted podcast. I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with the gifts, the talents, the resources to do this. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day, out of your busy life, to come and hang out with me on this podcast. Remember, you can follow the Undrafted podcast on Instagram at the Undrafted Podcast or on Twitter at the Undrafted Pod. I want to leave you with the Bible verse out of my favorite book, Psalm 9, verse 1. I will praise thee, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will show forth all thy marvelous works. Remember, do your best and let God handle the rest. Be blessed.